Okay, so in today's video, or what should I call it, today's class more like, because we're going to be going through the Objective Proficiency textbook again today. We're going to have a look at a listening and speaking class and treat this like a class. You know, if you've got any questions, if you've got any doubts, you know, leave them in the comment section. I will try to get back to everyone. So, free class, God, you're lucky. Anyway, we're going to look at a lot of expressions today. Some of which you'll be familiar with, others I assume not so much. I'll speak a little bit about the origins of some of them later on in the video, and obviously, as the title suggests, we're going to be doing a bit of listening, similar to part 1 of the exam, where you have 3 extracts and you have to basically listen for a paraphrased sentence. So that's what we're going to be doing a little bit later on. The first exercise we're going to look at, though, is this one here. So if you're following me with the book by any chance, we're on page 20. So it says in part 1 of paper 4, you may be asked questions about your expectations and ambitions in life. So we're talking about the speaking exam, right, as I did in the advanced class yesterday. Here you are going to hear 3 short extracts which are all concerned in some way with expectations. So we're going to be talking about what people intend for their lives, I suppose. One, though, we're going to have a look at some expressions that are going to come up in the listening. Exercise 1. So it says, the words and phrases in italics below occur in the extracts. Before you listen, work with a partner. Well, I'll work on my own. Maybe some of you can give me some comments that I can react to later. But before you listen, work with a partner and explain their meaning. So let's see if I can explain the meaning of all of these. I expect a lot of them can be understood through context. And you may know a few of them. A, it says conservative ideas about women in the workplace really really get my goat. Now, I don't know the origin of this expression, so it'd be interesting if anyone wants to tell me about it. But it is interesting. You know, I speak Spanish as well, so I know that they have a kind of similar expression. It's a verb, which is cabrear, which is interesting because the word cabra is goat, and cabrear means to annoy. And this is essentially what it means when we say something gets my goat. No, it gets your goat. It really gets on your nerves. It really bothers you, right? It gets my goat, yeah? I suppose the goat is seen as sort of like a bit of a eccentric animal, isn't it? You know, they'll sort of eat clothes and climb trees and whatever, and you know, I think it's something that makes you a bit mad, no? Is the idea. So this person's really progressive and hates conservative ideas about women. White knight, that's what we call a man who speaks like that. There's an expression for you. White knight, look that one up. Knight, K-N-I-G-H-T, as in an errant knight like Don Quixote. Okay, B. I got a bit carried away when I went shopping and spent far too much money. Well, yeah, if you get carried away, you kind of lose track of what you're doing and get overexcited. No, if you get a bit carried away when you went shopping, it's like you intended to go out and just buy a couple of things, maybe from cheap high street shops, but then, I don't know, you walk past the designer shop windows and I've got a credit card and I've got an overdraft, and it's well that £300 shirt looked like a good deal at the time. I got a bit carried away. You know, it's those damn mannequins. They make everything look so good. Okay, C. How much did you fork out for your new shoes? Yeah, to fork out is to spend. And I wonder where that expression comes from myself, but I think it gets, we get it from the idea of a pitchfork, no, that you would use for gardening, and you would fork out, I suppose, maybe I don't know, if you're forking out hay or something like that. So it's kind of like an exaggerated term to imagine that you're having to pick up the money with a spade or with a fork or something like that. I don't know. That's what's in my head. I'm sure it's got a different origin. I do know the origins to some of these, by the way. We'll carry on anyway. But to fork out basically means to spend. It's a colloquial expression for the word spend. Okay, D. The credit card bill was pretty hefty this month. I'll have to watch my step in future. Right. Hefty just means quite a lot, quite big. No, pretty hefty. A hefty load. You know, something is heavy and big, it's hefty. And we use it obviously in a figurative sense quite a lot. Okay, what about... and also there's an interesting expression there, to watch my step. You know, be careful. No, watch where you're stepping, literally, but figuratively as well. You need to be a bit guarded, be more careful. Okay, E. My sister was on a tight budget when she was at college. Yeah, I think this is easy to understand if you know what tight means. Tight, not loose. It's tight. You've got tight fitting clothes. You can be on a tight budget is that you don't have a lot of money, right? So yes, it's a figurative expression, but I think we all understand, you know, that you don't have a lot of room to maneuver. You don't have a lot of money. Your budget is quite tight. It's quite restricted, no? So, yeah, that shouldn't be too... an interesting thing with the word budget, I've noticed in Spanish, they have the same word for budget and for quotes. Now, budget is the amount of money that you have, the funds that you have available to spend on something. And a quote is what, for example, a plumber or an electrician will give you before doing the work. You need a written quote so that if they overcharge you afterwards, you say, no, I've got it written down here that you quoted me £100 and now you're trying to charge me £150, but this is a quote, right? I can quote you as you quoted me £150. That's £100. That's all I'm going to pay. Sorry. Good. F. She let her imagination run wild when she painted her room. Yes. If your imagination runs wild, it's released, it's free, isn't it? Obviously, we think of a wild animal or an animal in captivity. So if something is allowed to run wild, it's allowed freedom, no? So if you let your imagination run wild, then you become more creative and more adventurous, I suppose. So she probably painted her room all different colours, you know. Ooh, I'm creative. No, you've just got no style. Okay, good. G, I'm dead set on going to university and getting my degree. If you're dead set on something, well, I think we need to break this down a little bit, right? So if you're set on something, you're fixed on something, you're set on an idea, you're determined to do it. If you're dead set on, dead, we use it a lot of the time, like an adverb, as an adverb really, I suppose, to mean completely. So you're completely determined. I'm dead set on doing something, on going to university in this case. That's absolutely what I'm going to do. Okay, and in H, his ideas for expanding the company are very much in line with mine. Right? They're very much in line with my ideas. So they're along the same line. I think we have similar expressions in other languages, certainly in Spanish, which is the only other language I know. But I imagine it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? If something's in line with something else, it's similar to, right? So his ideas of how we're going to expand the company are very similar to mine, no? Very much in line with mine. Okay, so we're going to move on now to the listening activity. I wonder how many people have got this far in after my waffling. Let's go for extract 1, and we're not going to do it exactly like an exam test. Let's take our time, read the question, read the 3 possible options, because we're only going to listen to them once, I think, because You know, this is not a real exam task. Of course, in the real exam, in part 1 of the listening, you would have 2 questions to answer, so it's more complicated. Anyway, it says, you hear a woman talking about her expectations of a round-the-world trip. How does the speaker say she felt when planning the trip? Shocked by the potential cost, happy to make compromises, doubtful whether she could go. Let's just go for it. Let's listen.
Unit 2, 2.3, Exercise 2, Extract 1.
There was a mad excitement about standing in front of a world map and tracing a circumnavigation with my fingertip. Everything seemed possible, and my family's nagging doubts really got my goat. I'd say you can't really go wrong when choosing the stops on a round-the-world trip, but I found that some routes worked out better than others. You need a good variety of destinations. You might love the beach, but a trip that stops in California, Australia and Thailand, all for the sun and sand, does get a bit repetitive. At the same time, I didn't want to get carried away trying to see the whole world. Next, I knew I would have to fork out a pretty hefty sum for the plane ticket, as I didn't intend to be thumbing lifts. My budget was tight, so I had to play around with my route to get the best value for money. I also had to research my destinations to see what the average daily costs would be and figure out a budget, adding a good 10 or 20% buffer to be on the safe side. I decided to spend longer in cheaper countries and have a relatively short stay in more expensive places, which was sometimes quite a difficult decision as there were so many things I wanted to see. In fact, planning the trip was just as much fun as the actual travelling. I really let my imagination run wild, and the trip itself was everything I'd expected.
Right, so was she shocked by the potential cost? Well, it doesn't sound like it. It sounds like she planned everything pretty meticulously and said, and there was a key sentence in there, she said, I knew it would be expensive, or something like that, she said, no? So it doesn't sound like she was shocked. She seemed to have a very good idea of how much everything was going to cost. B, happy to make compromises. C, doubtful whether she could go. She knew that she would have to make compromises, that's definitely true, as she was looking at how long she would have to spend in more expensive countries, less time, how long she could spend in less expensive countries, more time. Doubtful whether she would go. I don't think so. No, she knew it was expensive. She knew she'd have to plan very well, and she'd have to have like a 10 to 20% buffer on her budget, on top of her budget. When she worked out how much everything would cost, she said, I need to plan for about 20% more, because, you know, you can never be sure. But I think she was happy to make these compromises, you know, because she said planning the trip, after all those things, she was working out how she had to look at low-cost accommodation and how long she could spend in expensive places and cheaper places. She said it was almost as fun as the trip itself. So, yeah, I think she was happy to make those compromises. She realised she was going to have to do that. And, yeah, she had a lot of fun doing it. So, yeah, I think it's clear that the answer is B there. Okay, extract 2. It says, you hear a student talking about someone who has influenced him. What does he think is the most important factor in becoming successful? Having a supportive family, having academic qualifications, having high expectations of yourself. Okay.
Extract 2. I really hope to make it as an entrepreneur, and I guess the person who's influenced me most has been a well-known British businessman. I was given a copy of his autobiography for my 14th birthday, and it really made a huge impression on me. He had an amazing childhood. Apparently, when he was just 4 years old, his mother stopped the car a few kilometres from their house and made him find his own way home. Then, when he was 11 or 12, his mum decided that he should cycle 70 kilometres to another town to teach him the importance of stamina and to learn a sense of direction. He said he felt great when he'd done it, but his mum wasn't worried or relieved or anything, just acted calm as you like and told him to go and help someone in the village chop some logs. His family seemed to thrive on challenges, physical ones rather than educational, which I think's quite unusual. I know my family are dead set on my getting a degree, but quite a few entrepreneurs start out without one, and look at them. Anyway, there was another occasion he mentions when his aunt had promised him some money if he learnt to swim. He spent a holiday trying desperately, but just couldn't do it. Then, on the way home in the car, he spotted a river. He made his father stop the car and just dived into the river in his underpants. The river was quite fast-flowing, and it seemed like he was going to drown, but then he pushed really hard and actually managed to swim. My childhood was nothing like that, but I guess what I read has made me realise I need to take on challenges and try to fulfil my hopes and aspirations.
Okay, so having a supportive family, does he think that's the most important factor in becoming successful? I mean, he talks about a famous entrepreneur, right, whose mother basically dropped him in the middle of nowhere when he was like 4 years old and told him to make his own way back to the house. Yeah. And that didn't really sound like she was supportive, more that... You know, is that supportive? Is that telling you can do whatever you set your mind to? He also says that when he got back to the house, this entrepreneur, his mother, you know, was completely nonchalant about it. She just told him to go and help someone in the village chop some wood. Just gave him another job to do. So I don't think the idea is that is, you know, a supportive family exactly. Having academic qualifications, well, he says that his family are all very keen on him getting a degree from university, but he says that, you know, a lot of entrepreneurs, very famous and very successful people, do not have a degree, and, you know, look at where they are. You know, it wasn't necessary for them. So having high expectations of yourself, yeah, he says something towards the end about another anecdote about some other businessman, I think, asking his father to stop the car, and he wanted to just jump out and get into this cold river. And again, bizarre, eccentric behaviour, but it's kind of about belief in oneself. And he says something along those lines. In towards the end, he says something like, "It's all about trying to fulfill my expectations." No, so I think the only answer I could get there would be C, having high expectations of yourself. No, believing in yourself, essentially. Okay, we're going to listen to one more extract here. Extract 3. And it says, you hear a radio newsreader talking about a new survey of young people. What does he say about young people's expectations now? I think this one's the most difficult one, so let's go for it. They continue to rise with their age. So as people get older, their expectations continue to rise. They are slightly more realistic than previously. So people's expectations now are slightly more realistic than they were at some time in the past, and they are different to those of a previous generation. So the expectations that people have now are very different to those of a different epoch. Let's go.
Extract 3.
According to the latest survey, commissioned by one of our leading banks, over 3/4 of 12 to 19-year-olds said they kept track of their money, up from 12 months ago. Half of young people said they were content that they had enough money, something only 46% said a year earlier, while the amount that those who were unhappy said they would need to be happy has fallen. However, the 9,000 young people questioned continued to have unrealistic salary expectations. The average teenager said they thought they would be earning double what is actually the current average salary for a 35-year-old. Not only this, but nearly 3/4 of those interviewed thought they would have a car by the time they were 21, while more than half hoped to own their own home by the age of 25. Overall, the bank calculates that the average expectation gap between where people thought they would be financially and where they would actually be was around £72,133, a small drop compared with last year's figure. Interestingly, although the figures differ somewhat, the findings are very much in line with previous surveys done over the past 20 years.
Right, so a little bit confusing. They continue to rise with their age. I don't think so. I think reality bites with age, because they interviewed teenagers and they found that they basically expected to be earning about double what the average 35-year-old does. So by the time they're 35, they expected to be earning double what the average wage currently is for a 35-year-old, right? They expected to own a car when they were by the age of 21, so the suggestion there is that most people don't. I don't know where this survey was done, but yeah, I feel like in England that's fairly realistic. But anyway, and they are expected to own a house by the age of 25. Yeah, that clearly isn't very realistic. So I doubt that their expectations continue to rise with age. No, I think reality would set in with age more than anything. Certainly nothing is said along the lines of really. They are slightly more realistic than previously. Now, there was one sentence that was interesting. They said that the Bank of England, I think it was, that did this study, worked out that the average teenagers' expectations were to have about £72,100 or something more than they actually probably would by the age of whatever, 35, I assume. Right. But then immediately after that, they said something like, which is down slightly from last year's figure. So the suggestion is that last year, when they did a similar survey, the teenagers were overestimating by even more. So they are slightly more realistic than previously, I think. See, they are different to those of a previous generation. He says, no, they're very much in line with the statistics that have been obtained over the last 20 years. So things haven't changed much at all. Okay, let's have a look at some useful phrases with body parts here. So, it says, I think what I'll do is I'll put my face over here and we can look at this a little bit better. Okay, so phrase spot. In the first listening extract, the speaker said, I didn't intend to be thumbing lifts. So your thumb, right? Thumbing lifts is hitchhiking. No, it's standing at the side of the road and getting people to stop to take you to your destination, right? Thumbing lifts. Yeah, she didn't want to be doing that. She wanted to be booking transport. No, in advance. So, if you thumb a lift, you signal with your thumb for a vehicle to stop and give you a free lift. Many nouns for parts of the body have related verbs that are used in phrases or idioms. Yeah, absolutely, lots of them. Match verbs 1 to 6 with A to F to form phrases or idioms. Which verb can be used twice? So let's have a look. We've got some expressions here. Elbow. Elbow, obviously this joint here. What can you do? You can elbow people aside with F there. Yeah, you can elbow people aside. That's a very literal thing. To elbow is to push with your elbow, or to nudge someone, we sometimes say. So if you elbow people aside, it's like you move them aggressively, violently perhaps, out of the way. You elbow them aside. I suppose you can do it figuratively as well. Okay, 2. Face the music. Now, this is an interesting one. You face the music, it's you face up to the consequences or of your actions, or you face up to reality in some way. And it's not clear where this expression comes from, but it certainly it seems to have, from the research I did before this video, it seems to have originated in the USA at the beginning of the 19th century. So there's a few theories, some of them a bit more elaborate than others, but The one that sounds pretty realistic, fairly probable to me, is that it was the idea of a disgraced military person, soldier, for example, when they are what's the term, discharged from the armed forces, and they would do a military drum roll as they walked out of the camp, I suppose, something like that. And so you had to face the music. You know, you were getting discharged from the army. You had to walk past everyone, feel ashamed, be humble on your way out. You had to face the music, quite literally. Now it just means face up to the consequences of something, right? 3, here's an interesting one as well. Foot. You can foot the bill. Now, this is an interesting one. I've never really thought about it until today. If you foot the bill, it's basically you pay for something, particularly like when you're at a meal with someone. I'll foot the bill, I'll pay for it. And the idea is, of course, if you've got a sheet of paper, which is the bill, we talk about the head and the foot of a piece of paper. No, the top and the bottom. At the foot is where you would get the total price. So, of course, in the past, you would add things up and you would write the total at the foot of the bill. And we used to say, to sum up everything that has been consumed, you would foot up at the end, right? Add everything up. And that became to foot the bill. About 150 years ago, people started saying that. So, yeah, fairly interesting one there. Okay, 4, shoulder. Shoulder, what do you shoulder? You can shoulder the burden. Now, a burden can be something literal if you think about, I don't know, Jesus Christ. His burden was the cross, I suppose, and the sins of humanity. But he shouldered the cross. No, literally carried something heavy on his shoulder, which is what we do. But if you have a figurative burden, you know, something that is difficult, something that is mentally heavy in your life, quite taxing, you have to shoulder the burden. And it's particularly if it's a problem that affects everyone, but you're the person who deals with the problem, you're the person who shoulders the burden, right? You're the person who puts most effort into solving or dealing with the difficult situation. You shoulder the burden. Okay, D, stomach. Yeah, you stomach an idea. Yeah. Again, this it is figurative, but of course it feels literal. It does feel literal. So, if there's an idea that you don't like, and somebody, you know, it is suggested that that's going to happen, you're going to say, I can or I can't stomach the idea. I can't stomach the idea of my daughter marrying that useless man. You can't stomach the idea of it. It makes you feel sick. If you can't stomach something, you cannot suffer it. No? It's too much for you to stomach. You feel repulsed by the idea. You can't stomach the idea. It's often used in a negative way, no? If you can't stomach something. We sometimes say, I can stomach it. You know, I can take it. I can stomach the idea. But often it's I can't stomach it. Okay, so 6, toe the line. To toe the line, again, it's has a military origin. And I guess you'll have seen this in a lot of military films. If you think about Full Metal Jacket, for example, Stanley Kubrick movie from the 80s, where you have the military men lining up, looking straight into the distance, and the lieutenant coming past them and drilling them, right? Screaming in their face. What they do is they all stand in line. Their toes are exactly in line with one another, right? With everyone else's, right? You stand literally on a line. You put your toe on the line to be drilled by the sergeant, by the lieutenant, right? So that's where toeing the line comes from. It means to conform, right? You must obey orders. You must toe the line. So let's have a look at these sentences and see how we can fit those expressions in. So it says use the phrases. Yeah. Okay. A. It is part of a manager's job to of complaints made by guests. It is part of the manager's jobs to, well, I guess shoulder the burden of complaints made by guests. We'll come back to that, but I'd imagine so. You know, the manager obviously has to deal with the problem more than any other worker a lot of the time. I mean, what's the typical thing that people will ask to do? They'll ask to see the manager, won't they? So he has to shoulder the burden of complaints made by guests at a hotel or restaurant, I guess. B. Don't worry about paying for your hotel. I'm happy to foot the bill. I'm happy to pay for it. Don't worry. So it's a business trip or something. I'm the boss. I'm sending you somewhere. Hey, don't worry about the hotel. I'll foot the bill. It's all done. It's all paid for. Don't worry. No. Okay, C. On his return to Canada, he finally and told his wife about his debts. Yeah, I guess he finally faced the music. He finally faced the music. Yeah, he faced up to reality. Was ready to face the consequences. Yeah, he faced up. He faced the music. Yeah. D. At the resort, I always on company policy, even if I disagreed with it. I always towed the line. I always towed the line on company policy. Hey, that's company policy. I'm going to follow it. I'm going to conform. I'm going to do exactly what my line manager tells me, right? Because that's company policy and I'm not here to disagree with them. I'm just a worker. I'm just a cog in the machine. Okay. E. Jenny couldn't really of moving to a big city, so she turned the job down. I guess she couldn't stomach the idea. She couldn't really stomach the idea of moving to a big city. She couldn't bear it. F. The woman in the queue. Yeah. So she could get on the plane first. She elbowed people aside in the queue. So it's quite literal now. She pushed people out of the way with her elbows very aggressively, very violently, just sort of barged her way through. No? Okay, so we're going to move on to a couple of speaking tasks here. So on this next page here we have a couple of backpackers. I think it says they're in Hanoi. Where's Hanoi? Is it Vietnam? I think it's Vietnam, isn't it? It's the kind of place those people go. Very nice part of the world. No, I've never been there. I've been to Thailand. That was great. And then we have some people graduating from university. So God knows what this refers to. I guess it's expectations for your future, which is what we're going to talk about now. It says in exercise 3, discuss these questions with a partner. Please leave some comments on the video. It would be good to know what you think. Discuss these questions. Do you have much opportunity to travel? Where would you go if you had the choice? It's like they knew what was going to happen. Do you have much opportunity to travel? Well, perhaps not as much as I would like since the beginning of this global pandemic. So, yeah, I don't get as much opportunity as I would like. Where would you go if you had the choice? I'd go to, I don't know, Florida, Sweden, Texas. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I've been thinking about going back to England recently, to be honest. Yeah, just to feel a little bit of normalcy. Because here on the continent, oh boy, they love their restrictions. They don't love their... Anyway, let's just move on, because this is something I need to speak less about. For my mental health. B, How would you feel about a round-the-world trip? Well, I think that ship has sailed for me, rather. I'm in my 30s now with 2 kids, so travelling around the world sounds like an absolute nightmare. I think it always did, to be honest. I need things to be very tightly organised and lacking surprise. I think I'm a bit neurotic in that sense. I don't like too many surprises. I don't like any surprises. I don't even like being given presents, to be honest. Anyway, see, what are your expectations of a job and salary? Well, I can't really think about that now. I suppose I can think about where I would like to be in 10 years and that kind of thing. What would I have said if I was a young person? Well, I can think about when I was 16 and I was asked by the careers advisor at school what I had as an expectation of a job, and I literally said a source of income, I think. Money. That was the most important thing. I don't know if that's true now. I think obviously you need a vocation. You do need to find what you are good at and what you are going to enjoy, right? But what were my expectations? Just to be able to live, To be honest, I just wanted a job that gave me money and I could go and do my thing away from my work. Of course, that's not really a good way of looking at the world. Now, I think you need to really specialise in something and work so hard at it that you become undeniable. I don't know. What about D? How important to you is it to do well academically? Well, it never was very important to me. And I didn't, I barely got through school because I didn't work very hard. How important is it to me? So I suppose the question would be, what would I expect from my kids? And of course, I do want them to do well academically because naturally we see that as a stepping stone to greater success in life, particularly living in a country like Spain where, everyone's got this idea of falling back on their qualifications in order to be able to do government exams, to work as a bureaucrat somewhere in an office, living out a shell of a life. But I don't know. I really don't know. I think some people are academic, some people aren't. I do have academic interests, I like reading and I like a lot of things. I like philosophy and I like all those kind of things, but I don't think I'm an academic. I don't think I was ever capable of having that discipline, being told what to do and sitting down and studying the syllabus. So, it just depends a little bit on your brain, a little bit on your education, a little bit of nature, a little bit of nurture, like what we were speaking about yesterday. E, how do you feel about the idea of becoming an entrepreneur? Well, yeah, I think certainly if I could go back and have my time over. I think what is clear to me is I do have an entrepreneurial mindset, which I do think is more biological than people think. Some people are just sort of born to do their own thing. I think I was quite creative as a child, and I think really my life has gone that way. I've got my language school and I've got my YouTube channel, and that's kind of what I enjoy, So it's not something that's ever presented to you as an idea, I think, at school. The idea of becoming an entrepreneur. The idea is either academia or getting a job. You can't be an entrepreneur at 16 if you leave school at 16. Clearly you can't. Not right away. But the idea of that being a long-term goal is never really presented to many people either. It's kind of something that you are brought up on. If your parents have got a business or something like that, which certainly wasn't my case. The world doesn't really offer you opportunities to be an entrepreneur. The world does, but society doesn't. I think, a lot of the time. I don't know. Let me know what you think. I'm just kind of rambling now. But yeah, that's what I would say. F. What would your priorities be if you were bringing up children? Well, I am. And I was thinking about this earlier, and I suppose, I'm into my psychology and things like that, so one thing I've heard is that if you can get your child to the age of 4 and they can make friends easily and they don't bite and kick and punch other children, job done. You've raised an emotionally healthy child. So my 5-year-old's out of that phase. My 2.5-year-old is still a little bit hitty. Doesn't bite so much now. But yeah, he needs to wind down a bit. My older child is a girl, my younger one's a boy, so I don't know if biology's playing a part there. But yeah, I would say, first of all, get them to the age of 4 without them being violent, antisocial, problem children. And then as they get older, what do you want? I suppose, ultimately, I want them to be capable of evil and choose not to be. That sounds horrible, but again, I'm into my psychology. It's all about incorporating the shadow, isn't it? Make them tough mentally, make them tough physically, and then make them choose to be kind, I suppose. Insofar as it is possible. But they need the capability to be nasty. Yeah. And use it sparingly, I guess. Let's have a look at pronunciation. Okay, so this is a little bit of a silly activity to end on, but I don't know, there might be some words that you're not sure about here. So obviously there's a silly example here. It says, I don't know what to expect. Well, no, N-O, obviously we mean K-N-O-W, right? So let's have a look at this activity here. We've got some words that are misspelt because they're homonyms, right? Some of these are easier than others. So the first one's very easy. Can you tell me the way to the centre of town? Obviously, weigh is to weigh something on a scale, to see how heavy it is. No, weigh. W-A-Y, weigh. No? The direction. B, how many pairs of trousers do you own? Well, pairs are a fruit, but we're talking about a pair of scissors, a pair of trousers. It's P-A-I-R-S. Obvious. C, again, very easy one. Let's meet for lunch tomorrow. Meat is what you eat. It's animal, dead animal. Flesh. So, meet, as in to come together, M-E-E-T, of course. D, his new girlfriend is heir to a fortune. Now, okay, so this is heir, as in you're going to inherit something, and it's pronounced the same as the air that we breathe, but it is spelt H-E-I-R, heir to a fortune. However, his girlfriend, that's a girl, that's a woman. I would call her an heiress, actually. I wouldn't call her an heir, even though it's probably like actor, actress now, waiter, waitress. They all want to be called waiter and actor. What a time to be alive. E, walking down the aisle was the scariest thing Ellen had ever done. Well, an aisle, spelt like that, is a synonym of island. So we say the British Isles. No? But of course here we're talking about a sort of like a corridor. That we talk about the aisle in a church that you walk down to get married, that you're carried down when you die. And of course in a supermarket we talk about aisle 5, aisle 6, where things are located. The aisles, sort of corridors essentially. And that is spelled almost the same, but with an A at the beginning. So A-I-S-L-E. Okay, F. The school principal is going to speak to everyone at midday. Principal there is like spelt like that, means like a value that you have. My principles. That goes against my principles. But the head teacher at a school, which is what we call them in England, is a principal. So principal, instead of L-E, it's A-L. Yeah. G, grate the cheese over the vegetables and bake for 20 minutes. So if you grate cheese on a cheese grate, that's G-R-A-T-E. So we put the E at the end instead of in the middle there. And it's pronounced the same, to grate something, right? Okay, H, the horse tossed its mane and neighed. Yes, so it sort of tossed its mane and neighed. Mane is the hair on the back of a horse's neck, and it is not spelt like that. It is spelt M-A-N-E. Mane there, of course, means like the principal, objective, the main objective, no? The central thing. No, we're talking about the hair on the back of a horse's neck, or a lion's mane as well. M-A-N-E. This fish bar does the best plaice and chips in town. Plaice is a kind of flat fish, and it's spelled P-L-A-I-C-E. I think we're finished for today. Bit of a strange class, I think, today. Been speaking quite a lot. But we're finished. Okay, goodbye.